Mr. Roach, you say that Judge Kavanaugh lied under oath when he testified before the Judiciary Committee last week. Can you explain how you know that he lied?
I can. I wasn't able to watch the testimony. I was in an airplane, but I read the testimony the next day, and I was struck as I was reading it that, I know Debbie and
Debbie Ramirez.
From Debbie Ramirez, and I know from my experience with her that at least from my perspective, there is zero chance that she is making up this story. And I heard Dr. Blasey Ford's, or I read Dr. Blasey Ford's testimony, and I heard some of it later, and I believe that she's telling the truth. But then, when Brett started saying things about his drinking and his use of certain words, sexually oriented words, I knew he was lying because he was my roommate. We were in a room together. Our beds were 10 feet apart for a couple of months. And what struck me and made me more interested in speaking out about it is not only did I know that he wasn't telling the truth, I knew that he knew that he wasn't telling the truth.
You say that he was and I'm quoting you, a notably heavy drinker even by the standards of the time. That's obviously not sort of how he described himself. Just since this is knowledge you say you specifically have, can you describe what you mean when you say he was a notably heavy drinker?
Well, sure. This is a time not long after Animal House was shown, and people drank a lot. You went to parties and drank beer. Many people did. But there were, even within that environment, there were people who were loud drunks, who were sloppy drunks, who were belligerent drunks. But even by those standards, my memory of Brett was that he was on the far edge of this. He was notably heavier in his drinking than other people.
Can you? I don't know if there's any specific examples, or can you say how often? Was this just something on weekends? I've read some accounts that there was a keg in the main room of the room that the suite of rooms that you had between the three roommates.
It was an awful long time ago, and I can't say he was drunk on this date or not, but I can tell you that my recollection of my experience with him was that he was drunk frequently, that it wasn't drunk to the point of having trouble getting up every month or two. It was frequently. I would say with some confidence it was at least once, maybe twice on the weekends. It may have even been during the week.
You say that actually one of the things that he testified was how focused on not only academics but also sports he was, in particular basketball, doing very hard workouts, and the implication being that is not an activity that somebody who drank to the degree which you say he drank would be able to do.
Oh, that's just nonsense. I was a varsity athlete and hung out with a lot of athletes, top athletes who can play at the collegiate level, can drink and work out. I don't think that there's anything that precludes one from the other.
You say also that he, and I'm quoting you, became aggressive and belligerent when he was very drunk. Do you have any specific examples? I'm not asking for dates, but just anything you remember, or how do you mean belligerent and aggressive?
I've been thinking a lot about that, and I want to provide a specific example, and I really can, and I should be honest about that. When I say belligerent, I mean belligerent in demeanor, yelling loudly. When people tell him to be quiet, tell him to shut up. I didn't see him personally ever hit anybody or ever behave aggressively towards women. When I say aggressive, I'm speaking more in carriage than in expression. When I first heard about this, I did call friends that I knew that knew both of us and spent time with Brett both freshman year and then after. And I did hear stories about times when he was physically violent, destructive. Those are not on the record, and they're not my stories to tell, but they made me feel like my memories of Brett were accurate.
Those were stories you heard from other students who were at Yale?
That's correct.
By the way, has the FBI talked to you either in any background investigation of Judge Kavanaugh ever? Because a big deal has been made of the fact that he went through more than 5 or I think 6 background investigations for various appointments over the years. Have you, as a freshman year roommate, of him. Have you ever been contacted by the FBI? And obviously in this latest investigation as well, have you been contacted?
I've been scratching my head about that. I was listening to the radio, I want to say a week ago, and they were talking about Brett having been interviewed by the FBI, backgrounds done on 5 or 6 occasions prior to this. And it struck me that, I was his freshman year roommate, and if you wanted to know how somebody behaved in college, which is a time where, especially that transition from high school to college, where people are likely to have done something that expressed something that might have been a problem, that they would have contacted me, right? 5 or 6 FBI interviews. Now, I started talking to friends. I said, well, is this just sloppy work, or why would somebody not contact a freshman college roommate, his only freshman college roommate, to try and figure out what this guy was like? And this person was quick to say, listen, the FBI are good. They're good guys. They take it very seriously. They do the work that they're told to do. If they didn't contact you, it's because whoever was doing the background check wasn't interested in what was going on at that time.
So just for the record, you've never been contacted either now or in any past investigation?
I've never been contacted about Brett by the FBI ever.
So you actually, for people who don't know the situation, it was you, Brett Kavanaugh, and another roommate in this, basically there were 2 bedrooms. You and Brett Kavanaugh shared a bedroom, and there was a common room as well. Your bed was, just as you said, feet away from his. Did you ever see him black out? He has testified that he was asked about blacking out. He said he didn't. He said maybe sometimes he went to sleep. Did you ever see him black out?
I didn't socialize with Brett, but being in the same room where he slept, I saw him when he arrived at home regularly, and I saw him in the morning. And I can tell you that he would come home and he was incoherent, stumbling. He would sometimes be singing. He occasionally would wear this, I think it was an old leather football helmet, and he would throw up. And then in the morning, would have a lot of trouble getting out of bed. I wasn't an angel back then either. There were times when I did the exact same thing. So we commiserated on this issue. And so the answer to your question is, yeah, I saw him both what I would consider blackout drunk and also dealing with the repercussions of that in the morning.
And you saw him throwing up?
Yeah.
On more than one occasion?
On more than one occasion.
Do you have any evidence that he ever had times where he did not remember what had happened the previous night?
My sense of it is that we did talk about that, but I can't repeat any specific issue. It's too long ago. The
judge has testified about how much he liked and likes beer. Was it just beer that he was drinking, to your knowledge?
My memory of it is that he was a beer guy.
When asked about your motivation to talk when you talked to the New Yorker, which according you say you did reluctantly, and even now talking, you've been reluctant to give any interviews. Judge Kavanaugh has said that you and your 3rd roommate hated each other. You got into fights, fist fights during the year, and that you had what he called a very contentious relationship. You didn't like each other. Is that true?
Not from my point of view. He referenced an incident where I played a prank on this 3rd guy, where we took the furniture out of his room and set it up in the grass quad outside of our dormitory. And I set it up just like it was in his room and waited for him to return as if I was studying in his room outside. It was a prank. I knew it would be irritating to him, but I thought he would think it was funny. And he didn't. He was very angry when he got back. He went to our common room where there was a keg of beer and filled up a pitcher and poured it on my bed, and I responded and did the same thing back to him. So we weren't close. That was a strained incident, but it never really turned into a fight. And I would say if I had to characterize this 3rd person, we just didn't have any relationship. I didn't hang out with him, but I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about him, and I suspect it was the same for him.
Just so I'm clear, the pouring the beer on the bed, that was the 3rd roommate, Dave. I believe his name was Dave, or was that Kavanaugh pouring the beer?
Yeah, I don't want to get into naming other people that aren't already dragged into this thing. I assume he has a good reason not to be part of it. But it was a 3rd person who was in our suite. There were more than just the 3 of us in the suite.
Okay.
Brett and I were in a single room together, and there were a series of other people in adjoining rooms. But yeah, it was the third person who poured the beer. And
okay.
I got to tell you, I was trying to figure out why this was redacted. It didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I wonder if maybe the reason was that it forces you to say there was a keg of beer in your room, which in retrospect is not very usual.